She sent him one final text message asking him not to forget to pick her up. She deleted his number. She got in the car, and no one ever saw her alive again. But here's the question that will haunt you for the rest of this video. The adults who were supposed to protect this girl had already been warned. Twice. And nobody did anything. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. Stories like this one need to be heard. Now let's get into it. On January 9th, 2024, 13-year-old Natsia Harris stepped off her school bus in Detroit, Michigan, and vanished. Just like that. One moment she was there, moving through the ordinary rhythms of a school day, and the next moment she was gone, swallowed by a city that would spend the weeks and months ahead desperately trying to find her. What investigators would uncover as they pulled back the layers of her disappearance was not a random act of violence. It was the calculated, deliberate end result of years of hidden abuse carried out by a man who had been hiding in plain sight, protected by silence, enabled by institutional failure, and emboldened by the trust of the family around him. This is the story of Natsia Harris. And before this video is over, you're going to understand exactly how something this horrific was allowed to happen, and why the people who were supposed to stop it never did. Detroit in January is brutal. The cold settles into the city like something with intent, pressing down on the neighborhoods, filling the spaces between buildings with a gray, unrelenting chill. It was in that cold, on the afternoon of January 9th, 2024, that Natsia Harris got off her school bus and disappeared. She was 13 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. And within hours of her not coming home, her family knew something was catastrophically wrong. Law enforcement responded immediately. The search that followed was enormous in scale. Detectives working around the clock, combing through Detroit and the surrounding areas with a focus and urgency that reflected the seriousness of what they feared. They searched abandoned buildings, their footsteps echoing through structures that had been left to rot. They searched wooded areas, pushing through brush and frozen ground. They searched waterways, working alongside volunteer search parties who had shown up in the cold because they refused to do nothing. Law enforcement expanded the search into neighboring cities and towns, following every lead that surfaced, chasing down every tip that came in. The community rallied. People who had never met Natsia Harris showed up to walk in the cold and look for her, because that is what you do when a child goes missing and the alternative is unthinkable. But despite all of it, despite the volume of the effort and the reach of the search, concrete leads were not coming. Days passed. The sense of urgency sharpened into something closer to dread. Every hour without answers was another hour that pressed down on the people who loved her. And behind the scenes, while the public search continued, investigators were beginning to pull on a thread that would unravel something far darker than anyone had initially imagined. 2 years before Natsia Harris went missing, someone in her family had tried to sound the alarm. In 2022, family members had gone to Child Protective Services with a report. They believed that Natsia was being abused. That report did not lead to a formal investigation. The allegation was recorded. And then, for all practical purposes, it was set aside. For the detectives now searching desperately for a missing 13-year-old, that history was not a footnote. It was a flashing red light. They obtained the CPS records, and the name at the center of those allegations stopped them cold. Jarvis Butts. Jarvis was in a relationship with Natsia's aunt, Shannon Harris. They shared children together. He was a fixture in the family's orbit. Someone the children around him knew, someone who moved through their lives with the ease of familiarity and proximity. According to the records investigators obtained and the reporting that followed, in February of 2022, Natsia's great aunt, a woman who would later publicly identify herself by her first name, Janelle, in an interview with ABC7, was allegedly told by Shannon Harris that Jarvis had been touching Natsia and 2 other children in the family inappropriately. Janelle said she was alarmed immediately. And the reason her alarm was so acute came down to something she already knew about Jarvis, but before anyone told her anything. She knew that he was on the sex offender registry. She knew that he had already served 8 years in prison for third-degree criminal sexual conduct. This was not a man with a clean record who had been falsely accused. This was a man with a documented history of exactly this kind of behavior, and he had been allowed into the lives of the children in this family. Initially, Janelle said she held back from reporting the abuse herself because Shannon told her that she would make the report. She trusted that. She believed it. But as weeks passed and nothing happened, Janelle made the call herself. On April 13th, 2022, she contacted Child Protective Services and filed a formal complaint. She said that after making that call, CPS never followed up with her. Not once. 2 months after Janelle's report, a second family member filed an additional complaint with CPS. According to reporting on the case, CPS did conduct interviews following that second report, but ultimately determined that the risk level was low. Low risk. For a child who was allegedly being abused by a registered sex offender who had already served nearly a decade in prison for the same kind of crime. That determination would prove to be one of the most consequential failures in this entire case. When detectives connected Jarvis Butts to Natsia and to those unresolved CPS allegations, they moved quickly. On February 15th, 2024, Jarvis was brought in for questioning. He sat across from investigators and told them that he had been dealing with a separate legal matter on the day Natsia went missing. He said he had no idea where she could be. He acknowledged that Natsia would sometimes come by the auto shop where he worked, but he framed it as completely innocent, saying she would stop in to spend time with his daughter, who happened to be her cousin. Beyond that, he maintained that he had not had any meaningful contact with her. He said he did not know the last time he had spoken to her. He said he had not seen her since late December or early January at her grandmother's house. He was asked directly whether he had been supposed to meet her on January 9th, 2024. He said not at all. He was asked why Natsia would have had his phone number saved. He said he did not know. He was lying, and investigators were about to prove it. The digital trail that Jarvis Butts left behind him was extraordinary in both its detail and its damnation. When detectives obtained warrants for his phone and his internet search history, what they found demolished every single thing he had told them during that February interview. On January 9th, 2024, the exact day Natsia Harris was last seen alive, a text message was sent from her to Jarvis using a tablet issued to her by her school district. The message read, "Don't forget to be here before 3. I will let you know when I'm leaving the school. If you're not here, I will wait." She followed it with another message. "Send OK if you see the message, so I could delete your number." Jarvis responded with a single word, "OK." He had not seen her since late December. He did not know the last time he had spoken to her. He had not been supposed to meet her on January 9th. Every word of it was a lie. With his location data now fully accessible, investigators began mapping exactly where Jarvis Butts had been on the day Natsia disappeared. His phone placed him traveling from Detroit, near the area where his auto shop was located, to Ypsilanti at approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon on January 9th. In Ypsilanti, a witness came forward to tell detectives that Jarvis had come to her home that day to work on her mother's car. He had brought a young girl with him. He introduced her as his niece. The witness said the girl didn't say much. She said nothing seemed unusually wrong, but the girl she described matched Natsia Harris. Jarvis's own sister also told investigators that she had seen her brother at the auto shop on January 9th with a young girl she didn't recognize. She had asked him who the girl was, and he told her it was his girlfriend's niece. She thought nothing of it at the time. It wasn't until news of Natsia's disappearance spread that she understood with a sickening clarity exactly who that girl had been. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. After leaving Ypsilanti that afternoon, Jarvis Butts' phone tracked back to Detroit, back to the auto shop. And that evening, he checked himself into the Park Crest Motel. The following day, he checked out at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon. His phone then placed him traveling to the River Rouge area of Detroit. Investigators moved methodically through every location his phone had traveled to. And in a wooded area near 7 Mile and Burke Road, they found something that shattered any remaining doubt about what they were dealing with. Lying in the brush were items of clothing: a pink jumpsuit, a hoodie, a pair of red, black, and white Nike sneakers, gloves, a dirty towel. Every item matched the description of what Natsia Harris had been wearing on the day she vanished. DNA samples were taken from each piece of clothing recovered at the scene. The evidence was no longer circumstantial. It was physical, traceable, and devastating. But even that was not the full picture. Because when investigators went deeper into Jarvis Butts' phone, when they pulled the complete history of text messages stored on that device, what they found reached back years before January 9th, 2024, and exposed something that had been hidden in plain sight for a very long time. Text messages between Jarvis Butts and Natsia Harris dated back to 2022, when she was 11 years old. The contents of those messages, which investigators stated publicly they would not read into the record because of how disturbing they were, documented what prosecutors would later describe as years of systematic grooming and sexual abuse. He had been cultivating access to this child, manipulating her trust, and abusing her since she was in elementary school. And the people and institutions that should have stopped it had been told, twice, and had not acted. But it was a single message, sent on September 26, 2023, that investigators believe set the final and fatal sequence of events into motion. On that date, Natsia sent Jarvis a text telling him that she believed she had missed her period. The messages that followed captured a terrified 13-year-old girl reaching out to the man who had been abusing her, not because she trusted him, but because she had no one else and no way to process what was happening to her alone. She told him she was scared. She told him she did not know what to do. She said she had a doctor's appointment the next day. Jarvis told her he thought a pregnancy test she had previously taken had come back negative. She told him she needed another one and had no money to buy it herself. She pleaded with him to bring her one. She told him not to be scared. She told him to just act like he needed to use the bathroom. She sent message after message without a response. She wrote, "Hello." And then finally, Jarvis replied, "Okay." That exchange gave investigators what they believed was the motive for everything that followed. Natsia Harris was pregnant, and Jarvis Butts was, prosecutors allege, the father. For a man already on the sex offender registry, a man who had already served 8 years in prison for criminal sexual conduct. The exposure that would come from that pregnancy becoming known was not something he was willing to face. The discovery that a 13-year-old girl he had been abusing was potentially carrying his child represented the single greatest threat to his freedom that he had ever encountered. And the record of what he did with that information is as damning as anything else in this case. Between December 8th and December 11th, 2023, investigators found that Jarvis had conducted repeated online searches about ending a pregnancy. He visited Planned Parenthood's website multiple times, looking up information about abortion pills. He searched for over-the-counter abortion medications. He visited websites promoting herbal teas as a method of terminating a pregnancy. He searched for information about drinking red antifreeze. He was searching frantically and repeatedly for a way to make the pregnancy disappear without anyone ever knowing it had existed. And when he could not find a solution that satisfied him, when the problem refused to go away quietly, prosecutors believe he decided to make Natsia herself disappear instead. On September 26, 2024, 9 months after Natsia Harris stepped off that school bus and was never seen again, Jarvis Butts was charged with first-degree murder, child sexual abusive activity, and second-degree criminal sexual conduct. Prosecutors moved forward with those charges despite the fact that Natsia's body had not been recovered. They stated publicly that the weight of the evidence they had assembled was sufficient to prove that she had been murdered. At the press conference announcing the charges, prosecutors described Jarvis Butts in terms that left no ambiguity about how they viewed him. They called him a serial predator. They called him a classic expert groomer and pedophile. They said he had used his romantic relationships with women to gain access to the young girls in those women's families, moving from household to household, from relationship to relationship, with a pattern of predatory behavior that they believe had been ongoing for years. And they stated directly, he groomed and preyed upon Natsia with expertise, and they would prove that he killed her after he discovered she was pregnant at 13 years old with his child. As of the time this video was made, Natsia Harris has not been found. Her body has never been recovered. There's a family somewhere in Detroit living every single day with that absence, with the not knowing, with the understanding that somewhere out there their child is gone and they cannot bring her home. There's a community that came out in the cold to search for her and never found her. There's a little girl who sent a text message asking someone not to forget to pick her up, who deleted his number like he asked, who got in that car, and who deserved so much more than what the world gave her. The system failed Natsia Harris. It failed her in 2022 when the first report was made. It failed her again when the second report produced no meaningful intervention. It failed her every single day that a registered sex offender with a documented history of abusing children was allowed to remain in proximity to the children of the people who loved him. And when it was already too late, it was investigators with warrants and phone records in a wooded area near 7 Mile and Burke Road who were left to piece together what had happened to her. Natsia Harris was 13 years old. She deserved to grow up. She deserved to be protected. She deserved every single thing that was taken from her. And the very least that the rest of us can do is make sure that her name and her story are not forgotten. If this story moved you, and I think it did, please take a moment right now to like this video and share it with someone who needs to see it. Hit that subscribe button for Stories Solved the Missing J, and leave a comment below telling me what you think about how CPS handled this case, because I want to hear from you. These stories stay alive because of this community. Natsia Harris deserves to be remembered, and we are not done talking about her.